It's quite simple. What kind of super weapon would we get if all the weapons for a class and their slot were compiled together? This video series aims to explore exactly that, so let's see what horrible contraptions we would concoct. And before we begin, another huge thank you to Alaxe and Mr. Light for their work on the models and renders for this episode. The Engineer's primary is a rather oddball combination, which we will be naming the Attack Ranger's Justice Maker 6000. Originally, I thought this weapon was going to be terrible, until I put the stats together and I realized something fantastic. With its unique attributes, it will store 2 guaranteed critical shots for every Sentry gun kill, and of course it'll also store 1 for every Sentry gun kill assist, and of course it'll only store up to 35 of these crits, which are granted only upon Sentry gun destruction or demolition. Instead of shotgun pellets, it's going to shoot an electric projectile, it can light friendly huntsman arrows, and upon pressing and holding down the primary fire, the player will begin loading projectiles into the magazine port, which will continue to do so as long as the primary fire is held down, up to 4 projectiles. Here is where we have some insane positives. On hit, damage dealt is returned as metal, and you also get 10% bonus damage to the same target as your Sentry. It will also not require any ammo, because it's replaced with an ammo meter. The projectile also cannot be deflected. On hit, the victim will lose up to 10% medigun charge if they're a medic, and they'll lose up to 20% cloak if they are a spy. Alternative fire will cost 100 metal to pick up buildings from a long range. It also can repair friendly buildings. The weapon will also deploy 50% faster. It has an innate 30% faster fire rate, which also increases as your health decreases, and of course the port can hold up to 4 projectiles. These are the only negatives on this weapon, and they're hardly anything. There are no random critical hits, revenge crits are lost on death, it only deals 20% damage to buildings, and finally there is a self-mark for death when you pick up a building and for a few seconds after redeployment. What we have here is a very powerful shotgun for the Engineer that has very little in terms of actual downsides because of how the things cancel each other out. I originally stated in the heavy video that the panic attacks mechanics would bring this gun down, but I had forgotten a few key things. The Widowmaker's no ammo requirement works in this gun's favor immensely, and the panic attack's fire rate increase as the health goes lower is only beneficial. Because the negative of the panic attack is that the bullet spread is wider, it does not affect this weapon because it is an electric projectile. So there is no bullet spread, it will continue to go in a straight line. In addition, because the Thompson has an ammo meter and it regenerates ammo on its own, it wouldn't pull from the metal pool like the Widowmaker would, but it would also still keep the benefits of the Rescue Ranger. This shotgun is literally the all-in-one tool. This shotgun is a slow-moving projectile that holds crits, and not only does it return metal to you when you hit somebody, but it can also reduce charge and cloak of enemies, and it can repair your own buildings, and fires faster as you're in more damage. One of the only real downsides is that it's not a hit scan weapon, and it has a mark while you're moving buildings, but that's kind of expected. It pairs with your team really well, and it's basically like a mini Cow Wrangler in that you can release your entire ammo kit in one big launch. It's extremely impressive, and thanks to the no ammo, a lot of the reload and metal downsides were removed entirely. That is awesome. Now, I did debate on whether or not this weapon would still require 30 metal to reload, and the reason I decided against it is that they are electric projectiles overriding the bullets, and I do think that is a very fair trade-off, because one of the amazing benefits of the Widowmaker is the ability to keep firing so long as your damage output exceeds the metal cost. But sadly, there is that ammo meter with the Thompson, so you do lose out on that. What you lack in sustained DPS with this weapon though, you make up for with an incredible amount of utility and defensive capabilities. Moving on, the Engineer will have 2 secondaries. His pistol, which will suffer from no changes at all, it's still just a pistol, and you will have the Circuit Wrangler. And for the Circuit Wrangler, it's going to get just a little bit weird. Originally, I thought it was just too weird to combine them together, but it's actually quite feasible. Now, when the weapon is active, you gain the Sentry Shield. With your primary fire, your Sentry shoots its gun as normal. We won't worry about rockets once we hit the Engineer's melee section. Its secondary fire will give you the short circuit's projectile destruction, but you lose the ability for close range combat with the taser that the short circuit would normally provide. The projectile destruction still does damage, yes, but it does much less than the short circuit's normal primary fire. So, in total, the alternate fire will use metal as ammo, and it takes 10 metal per shot with an additional 5 metal loss per projectile destroyed. Also, while this weapon is active, you cannot pick up buildings. Its primary fire will allow you to enable manual control of the Sentry gun, and while the weapon is out anyways. The Sentry gun will of course have double the firing rate and the laser pointer to assist, and it also has the shield that reduces 66% of incoming damage. What this does is give the engineer an opportunity to defend himself and his Sentry from damage at any given time without being directly next to it. Basically, with the engineer's primary and secondary, he switches from offensive debuff mode to defensive tank mode and losing most benefits from either side. While wielding the Circuit Wrangler, he has next to no personal offensive capabilities. Yes, he does have the Sentry primary fire, but against a class that is targeting him, he's going to be out of luck if they have any bullet weapons. Now, for the engineer's melee, we are going to see the sad departure of the level 3 Sentry, as only minis will exist with this weapon. Given that his primary weapon is a very powerful shotgun, it only makes sense that we see him more on the front lines of the battlefield. Please welcome the Southern Jag Slinging effect. It replaces the Sentry gun with a combat mini Sentry gun. It will increase your maximum health by 25 points, and if you hit an opponent, it will cause them to bleed for 5 seconds. It will guarantee a critical hit on the 3rd consecutive punch. Teleporters also cost 50% less metal. Pressing the reload key will allow you to teleport to your spawn or your exit teleporter, and there is a 15% faster firing speed. But it does come with a slew of downsides. There is a 20% lower repair rate, a 25% damage penalty against players, a 33% damage penalty versus buildings, which means that sappers are taken off slower. There is a 20% fire vulnerability, there is no random critical hits, construction hit speed boost is decreased by 20%, and there is 20% less metal from dispensers and pickups. While this does sound like there are a lot of negatives, I do want to point out a few things. While you do become a very vulnerable class when it comes to pyros thanks to this weapon's downside of fire vulnerability, and you cannot affect mini sentries as fast as one normally could, the time difference is quite negligible. Considering you need less metal for the sentry and teleporters, the 20% less metal is not a huge downside. If anything, it just scales to what you need. And given that it is a mini, the repair rate isn't a terrible downside either. If you have time to repair a mini, you have time to make a mini in a better or new location. Given that with the Circuit Wrangler you can turn the mini sentry into a veritable level 2, I would say that this is a fairly balanced deal. You also gain the mobility to swap from spawn to teleporter freely, meaning if you see something is going down and you can't prevent it, fleeing from danger should always be available to you. You should also have spy checking always available to you, and that means you are truly a tougher target for spies to take down. Given that you also have a faster switch speed for your primary, making a spy bleed and then shooting them with your primary is a very fast way to deal with your spies, especially since you'll also take away their cloak. The teleport switch and being given minis makes ninja-neering also a very terrifying prospect. While before you had to teleport and then get your sentry there or spend time getting up, now there's little to no worry, just teleport and plop your sentry and whammo, instant distraction. All in all, the engineer's combined weapons transform him into a far more frontline offensive class. He counters medics, spies, soldiers, demomen, and scouts very easily, but he lacks in direct area control given that his minis are less impactful than a level 3 or 2 could ever be without Wrangler assistance. It is interesting to see how with these weapons his turtling style is completely removed, and as a reminder, he still does have a pistol, so if you don't want to rely on your Thompson or a Wrangler, that is still a very viable alternative. Alright, with that being said, thank you for watching, and please, stay tuned because more will be coming your way. Bye bye. Here's one that I should have done a long time ago. Time for Tickles, who made this art piece. I'm sorry, Tickles, because I put in another art piece that you did in a previous video, but I forgot to mention this one, and that is my mistake. So here you go, everybody look at it. It's beautiful, I know. Also, good work to BitPie Studios for donating an unusual isotope pistol with specialized mean green effect to No Expert Green. That is incredibly kind of you. And now they are definitely super green. And consider letting me know about your own awesome accomplishments in the Space Barber Steam group below. A link is in the description. Also, if you like what I do and you want to support me, please consider checking out my marketplace.tf page or consider donating to me. A link to my shop and my trade offer are in the description below. All of my items in the shop are gifted or crafted by me as proof of support. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and please stay tuned because more will be coming your way. Bye bye.